Hello everyone, I'm Zoltán Lehoczky and I'm excited to be with you here again at .NET Conf. And I would really like you to not reinvent the wheel. I would like you to save some time when you build your .NET web applications. That's why I would like to show you how Orchard Core, which is a CMS and a web framework, can help you. Because why would you use a CMS to begin with? You use .NET, I believe use ASP.NET Core. It's already a framework. Why do you have to use anything else above that? CMS, or a content management system, is there for you to not to reinvent the wheel when it comes to features of web applications. And we are talking about not just content management features necessarily, although that's usually the cornerstone of a CMS, but also various other features that a web application, any kind of web application, can benefit from, and that's necessary as a foundation for such applications. So apart from content management, like managing pages and menus and a blog, you also need some kind of authentication and user management, possibly have a social login or OpenID login. Also be able to run various automations in that system, like schedule content publishing or post to external systems. You want to integrate with it via various APIs, that kind of stuff. A CMS can help you with that a lot. And usually a CMS is also a framework, because it's not just the feature set that you are using alone, but also something that you extend. So it's also kind of an application framework, again, built above .NET and the ASP.NET Core. And it's not just about the software, but when you buy into a CMS, so to say, you also get a lot of ecosystem with it. You get other extensions, plugins that other people have developed. You get support either by a developer or from a wider community. And Orchard Core is something like that. It's a CMS and it's also a framework. Actually, how we express what Orchard is on the website is like we see it here. Open source modular multi-tenant application framework and CMS for ASP.NET Core. Now, I didn't want to include everything in the title because it was already too long, but let's dissect this a little bit. Orchard Core is open source, free and open source. It has very permissive license. You can inspect everything it does. It's modular. It's not just a monolith that has all the code in a single project or something like that. It's split up in a lot of parts that can be independently turned on or off, or even components that you can independently use. You don't have to use the whole of Orchard. You can just use framework features or just content management features without other built-in modules, or you can mix and match. It's also multi-tenant. That means that a single Orchard Core application can host multiple independent websites. So from a user's perspective, these websites are completely separate. They know nothing about each other. Even the administrator users wouldn't really be able to tell that what they are managing is a tenant within a multi-tenant application. And this is good because you can get a lot higher site density. You can pack multiple sites onto a single server. It's also a framework, as I mentioned, not just a CMS. I just wanted to emphasize the CMS part in this talk. And of course, it's built on ASP.NET Core. Actually, mostly it follows the MVC paradigm, so we can also say it's built on ASP.NET Core MVC. It's built on the latest framework, currently that's .NET 6, very soon .NET 7. As mentioned, it mostly follows the MVC paradigm. It's completely open source, has been from the start, and it's under the umbrella of the .NET Foundation. It has a very active community and quite a large code base. We have thousands of commits, hundreds of contributors, and a very active issue tracker as well. It's not just that people open issues about bugs and feature requests, but those issues are actually getting closed. We at the Orchard community address them, fix the bugs, implement the features, and publish new Orchard releases. Now, why am I here talking about Orchard? I'm from a company called Lombic Technologies. We have been working with Orchard for almost a decade now. I personally have been in the Orchard community for more than a decade, since about 2011. At that time, it wasn't ASP.NET Core, but ASP.NET, of course. The current edition of Orchard Core, was the re-implementation of Orchard with the advent of .NET Core. And we believe in Orchard that much that we built our whole company on it. We offer all kinds of Orchard services. And well, I may be biased, but we wouldn't start any web application without building it on top of Orchard. Now, but probably you are not that convinced yet. So why would you use Orchard? It's everything that you know about and like in ASP.NET Core MVC. But it builds a lot on top of it. We tend to say it supercharges ASP.NET Core. It extends, for example, the localization or the authentication pipeline or the authorization pipeline, hooks into ASP.NET Core's logging, and builds a lot of features on top of it. So everything you know about ASP.NET Core still applies, but you get a lot of features, both user-facing or user-level features out of the box, and you get a lot of further framework features. It's also extremely flexible. So if we take a look at the whole of Orchard, it's a huge feature set. But as mentioned, you don't have to use all of that. And you don't have to use it in a way that's coming out of the box. You can mix and match features. You can configure a lot of things. You can override even pieces of the code base from your own plugins and hook into what Orchard does to customize it fully. It provides a lot of features that you can customize. Last but not least, and that's also a personal thing of mine, because that's also my story of how I became a much better developer than I was before Orchard, is that while you work with Orchard or work with a large, active and quality project like this, you also become a better developer, because it's open source. You can interact with the code base, you can check out everything, you can modify it and experiment around with it. You can create your own plugins, what we call extensions in Orchard, and while doing that, you can learn a lot from the developers of Orchard. Among those who have written Orchard's code, there are people who work on the ASP.NET team as well, and otherwise there are some very talented .NET developers. And it's not just about the software. As mentioned, when you are using a CMS, you also get to become part of a community. The Orchard community, it's hard to tell how big it is. It's not a huge one, like the larger CMSs out there. It's a smaller niche, but it's a tight-knit community as well, with a lot of people knowing each other since years, but it's also a very welcoming and helpful one. So if you are just arriving in the open source space, Orchard is probably a good entry to it as well. And of course, people are using Orchard. So let's also check out a couple of examples. Now, some of them will be actually Orchard 1, or migrating from Orchard 1, the .NET edition of Orchard, but most of them will be Orchard Core. For example, Royal Veterinary College. There are universities, colleges using Orchard for all kinds of purposes. We know about some public-facing websites, but also private ones, more like intranet applications as well. Sometimes cool entities like the Cornwall Aerospace, which is a research hub, use Orchard as well. Sometimes brands that you may have heard of, like House of Blues, which is a brand of Live Nation. You know, they organize huge concerts all around the world. They use Orchard as well. Starbucks is also a household name. Actually, the Singapore Starbucks branch uses Orchard for their public website as well. Sometimes governments, municipal governments do that too. City of Santa Monica, website built on Orchard. Other kind of governmental organizations like the Smithsonian use Orchard as well. Smithsonian is the world's biggest museum, complex museum network. The Folkways Recordings division of it uses Orchard, actually not just for this website. Other governments as well, the Employment Security Department of Washington State too. And if you are interested in more examples of how Orchard is used around the world, check out showorchard.com. Showorchard is a gallery of pretty much exemplary Orchard websites from all around the world in all kinds of topics. You can check them out and, well, make a judgment for yourself. And now let's also see Orchard in action. So actually, how does the whole thing work? And now what I will do is that I will actually create an Orchard solution, a Visual Studio solution. To make it a bit quicker, I will use a script for that. It's an open source script that we have developed. It uses .NET's command line templates. And once it's finished, you will see that we got a solution file and also a source folder where we have a web application and a modules folder with something and a themes folder with something. We'll see it in a second what that actually is. But let's open the solution. Here we have the same thing. And this web application is actually a normal ASP.NET Core web application. Remember that I said that Orchard is ASP.NET Core supercharged? Well, you add Orchard to an ASP.NET Core application. This is what we see here in action. It's pretty much just a single NuGet package if you want to pull in everything from Orchard and also something for logging. What this script also generated for us is a module and a theme project. Modules in Orchard are kind of plugins that provide functionality, and themes are also kind of plugins but that provide more like styling and look and feel. Now let's start this application and let's set it up. Here's the Orchard setup screen. That's what you are greeted with. You see, it's quite simple. So let's start everything here. You have to give it a name, the new site that you create, and then you have to select a recipe. What is this? A recipe is kind of like a template. It's pretty much a JSON file that contains content and configuration for your Orchard site. So as you can see, we can start with a blog, for example, or we could create a site for something like a company, an agency, or we can start with something smaller, or even we can start with the foundation of a SaaS. Again, multi-tenancy. Let's start with a simple blog now. The time zone will be suitable, as well as the language for now. Orchard is fully localized. There are also localization packages available in all kinds of languages. You can also contribute to the localization, since that's, of course, also open source. Orchard also supports multiple database engines. SQLite is just a file, so the simplest to begin with, especially during local development. But if you want to deploy it to the cloud, like host it in Azure, you can also use SQL Server or something else. Let's stay with SQLite for now. And I will create a user account here. That will be the default user account. as the password when it's about local development, and for testing we just use this one, but don't tell this anyone. This is our secret password, just between us. And here it is. The setup has run. Orchard has created its database file and configured everything from the blog recipe. And as you can see, this is like a nice little blog. Not much happening here. There's a blog post with some tags and categories, some links. There's also a menu and an about page. So something that you would expect from a simple start of a blog. Let's also log in at the admin. We'll do it with our previously created super secret password. Again, don't tell this anyone. Of course, don't use something like this in production. And here's the Orchard dashboard, the admin area of Orchard, where all the magic happens, where you can configure everything. And what I would like to show you here is just a little overview of what's built into Orchard. But remember again, this is just the foundation. This is what you build on. You can customize everything here. You can turn on further features. Not everything is turned on here. You can pull out features or not load features if you don't need them. You don't even need a front end because you can run Orchard in a headless mode, which means that you have the admin, but there's no front end. You just communicate with it via web APIs. There's a lot of flexibility. But let's first take a look at the content model of Orchard because, well, it's a content management system. Here's our blog, and here's our single blog post. As you can see, it has a title, it has a link, and it has some content in Markdown actually. So this is using a Markdown editor, and there are a couple of other things. So quite nice. Let's see what else we can create here. And if we go to content items, we can list all the content items, all the content that's in the system. As you can see, the about page that we have seen on the front end is also a content item. It also has a title, it also has a link, and it also has a body, although this is not Markdown, but it's called HTML body here. It's actually HTML code with a WYSIWYG editor. And something like a menu, as mentioned, is also content. So this looks like, well, something usual or something that you would probably expect. Now, let me emphasize something here and let's go a bit deeper. You see that the menu also has a title, and again, the about page has a title and the permalink, and the blog post also has a title and a permalink. Are we copy-pasting code around in Orchard to have a title everywhere, or is there some kind of component that provides a title? And there is. Let's actually look behind the scenes, and let's go to content definitions, content types. Here are all the blueprints of content that Orchard manages. In Orchard terminology, a content type is kind of like a class that describes how that piece of content should look like. And the content item, like a specific blog post or a specific page, is like an object that you created from that class. For example, this blog post here, or the blog post content type here, you see, this is all the configuration of how all blog posts should work and look like. And we have two interesting things here, parts and fields. And other parts we have title and outer out. Let's take a second to notice the same thing when we go to article, which is the content type of the about page, and let's check out. It also has parts, also title, and also outer out. What is happening here? These blueprints, these content types in Orchard, are built from so-called content parts. Basically, content parts are the building blocks here, and they are shared building blocks. So there's a title part that provides the functionality of a title. You can use it to have a title for a blog post, but it's the same title for something like an article. Similarly with the outer out, If you want to have a permalink of a content item, you can use the outer out parts. Fields are something similar. They are also building blocks, just smaller ones. The point of fields is to have like specific store specific data, like a subtitle, while parts usually provide not just some data storage but also some behavior, some functionality. So this is a very flexible content model, and by using it, you can very quickly build quite complex content models. You can model any kind of content that goes onto a website. You can also create your own content parts, your own content fields. You can create your own content types right here from the admin, but you can also create them from code. It's very flexible, very customizable. But of course, it's not just about content as I mentioned. We talked about having a menu, which is kind of a content here. But there's also user management. There's a user store in Orchard that hooks into all the user management and authentication features of ASP.NET Core. It provides role-based access control as well, so you can restrict who can do what. For example, or on the admin, who has access to which feature. This is the built-in local user store, but you can use social logins. You can log in with Active Directory. You can use any OpenID authentication too. When it comes to fetching content, there's also search. You can query content via SQL that you can even write on the admin. We are still just talking about the user-facing part. From code, you can do anything, of course. This is safe SQL, by the way. You can't break anything here. But there's also further search. There's built-in Lucene search that you can configure and use. In the upcoming version of Orchard, Elasticsearch will be supported too. We have import and export, which uses recipes. You remember recipes during setup? It's the same thing. You can export everything from your Orchard site, move it to somewhere, use it for development, import it on another already running Orchard website. Similarly, you can also import from here. And this goes via zip files if you want to use that, but it can also go directly. One Orchard application can export and import to and from another Orchard application. There's also media management, which works how you would expect something like media management to work. And these features are actually all kinds of modules in Orchard. As mentioned, modules are plugins that provide functionality. Lots of functionality here. It's something that you can check out. And there are also themes. As mentioned, themes are about changing the look and feel of a website. So our website looks like this currently, but if we change to something like the default theme, which is a very simple but not very nice theme, then it will look differently. But we actually have this Orchard Core theme here. And this is the theme that was generated for us by the script. So actually, let's make that current. And well, this is how it looks like. Not very nice, but let's write a little bit of code. And let me go back to Visual Studio. In our theme here, we have the bare bones of how a theme works in Orchard. As you can see, there's a liquid file. Orchard can use templates written in the liquid language or also in Razor markup in CSHTML files. So if we write something here and do a quick rebuild, which by default is necessary, but you can configure Orchard not to require that, then we should be able to see it. Oh, sorry, I actually have to restart the app. So I will need to do that. Hold on. Oh, I couldn't do that. Anyway, if you actually can restart it, it will show some changes. The modules can use liquid templates as well, but by default, we have some CSS/HTML there. As mentioned, Blazor is also available. And some final remarks here. If you if I piqued your interest, and I really hope I did, then you can try out Orchard. How can you try it out? Well, you can download the source code. I will show the link to that in a second. But if you like to host it somewhere, you have all the varieties that .NET provides. So anywhere where .NET runs, you can run Orchard. Pretty much any hoster will be sufficient there that has .NET capabilities. If you use IIS or want to use something like Azure App Services, it works as well, just as with containers. If you like a more catered SaaS version, our .NET product is also available, where you register and can get an Orchard site in a multi-tenant application in a minute. Now, if you like to start with Orchard, check out the website. Everything is there. You will also be able to access the documentation with a lot of examples, tutorial videos, everything. OrchardDojo.net, it's our website with a lot of Orchard training and learning materials, also a video series. I suggest you check that out as well. And if you like to stay up to date with Orchard, there's also a newsletter for that. Finally, if you like to learn from code and would like to see a lot more code that I couldn't show you this time here, check out what we call the training demo module. It's an Orchard module that works as a module, but its sole purpose is actually to teach you how to work with Orchard as a developer. There's a lot of code with even more comments. And finally, if you have any questions, I would also be happy to help you. Just drop me an email. Thank you for your attention. Bye everyone.